Chinese and Australian ships pick up underwater signals in the Indian Ocean. Taiwan's parliamentary speaker visits student protesters. And a largely peaceful landmark election in Afghanistan.
Good evening. Chinese and Australian ships hunting for the missing Malaysia Airlines plane have both picked up underwater signals that they hope are from the plane's black box recorders. Now, to ensure it's not another false lead, the Australian military was sent to confirm this latest discovery.
With less than 24 hours before the missing plane's black box battery dies, the Chinese search vessel Haishan 01 hopes the acoustic signals it picked up over the past 2 days will solve this aching mystery. Being cautiously optimistic, Australian officials were careful not to give false hope.
This is an important and encouraging lead, but one which I urge you to continue to treat carefully.
To be 100% sure, the Australian military was sent to verify.
That's why today Royal Australian Air Force assets will deploy to assist in further examining the acoustic signals in the vicinity of where the Chinese ship has detected the sounds.
In other hopeful news, an Australian vessel also detected acoustic pings in the area experts believe flight MH370 went down.
We had a report back from Ocean Shield from the towed ping locator operators on board there that they had picked up a detection.
Australian officials insist no lead is worthy until it's verified.
My understanding is that they're unconfirmed. And look, the point I make is that we are hopeful, but by no means certain. This is the most difficult search in human history.
Speculation and unconfirmed reports can see the loved ones of the passengers put through terrible stress.
Those volunteering to comfort the families of the missing agree. They say coping with so many ups and downs in the investigation is devastating. So for now, prayer is their only comfort.
Anybody you do not know what happened to them, it will always be very painful.
But she, like so many other grieving families, refuse to believe their loved ones are lost forever.
In Taiwan, Parliamentary Speaker Wang Jingping today promised to enact a law regulating pacts with the mainland first before reviewing the controversial cross-strait service trade agreement. Called on student protesters to end their 20-day occupation of the Legislative Yuan. The students will hold a meeting at an unspecified time to decide what to do next. Wang paid a visit to the student protesters in the Legislative Yuan's main chamber and shook hands with them. It was the first time the parliamentary speaker had entered the assembly hall since the student occupation began. Before going inside, Wang pledged he will not convene consultations with the ruling and opposition legislative caucuses on the Service Trade Pact until monitoring laws are in place. This is largely in line with one of the demands of protesters. But he also urged the students to end their occupation, saying their action has made it impossible for lawmakers to work on a number of bills. The leader of the student protest, Lin Feifan, described Wang's move as a goodwill response. He said whether the students will hold a meeting to discuss what to do next, they will keep up with their protest. The United States will deploy 2 additional ballistic missile defense destroyers to Japan by 2017 as part of an effort to boost protection from North Korean missile threats. U.S. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel says the 2 ships are in response to North Koreans' pattern of provocative and destabilizing actions. The 2 additional ships would bring the total to 7 U.S. ballistic missile warships in Japan. Hagel made the announcement after a meeting with Japan's defense minister. He also said he intends to tell Chinese officials they must have respect for their neighbors in reference to territorial disputes in the South China Sea. Hagel is set to travel to Beijing next as part of a 10-day trip across the Asia-Pacific. Ukraine is warning it will take Russia to an arbitration court if talks with Moscow fail to roll back hikes in the price of natural gas. Russia nearly doubled the price Ukraine pays for its gas this week, forcing Kiev to enter into emergency talks with European neighbors to boost cheaper imports from the West. Kiev calls the price hike economic aggression. Activists are urging a boycott of Russian products in supermarkets across the country. Flash mobs have staged die-ins at several stores to protest the fact that many items in Ukraine supermarkets are produced in Russia.
2 months before the start of the World Cup, and Brazil is taking bold steps to improve security. More than 2,000 soldiers stormed into a Rio de Janeiro shantytown yesterday using armored tanks and helicopters. Not one shot was fired during the militarization. Wresting control of the area from drug gangs is a priority for authorities who are working to make the city safer. The complex of 15 favela shanty towns is strategically located next to the city's international airport, where tens of thousands of fans will begin pouring in. The troops plan to remain in this and other violent slums until after the World Cup ends. A volcano in Ecuador called the Throat of Fire is wreaking a lot of havoc. When it erupted on Friday, it spewed molten rocks and sent clouds of gas and ash 10 kilometers into the air. Ecuador confirms the first explosion lasted 5 minutes, followed by a second 4-minute explosion. The eruption from the 5,023-meter-high volcano affected a third of Ecuador's provinces, and it temporarily closed a regional airport. The Turagura volcano has been erupting sporadically since 1999. Back in 2006, it killed 4 people and left 2 missing.
Expectations are enormous in Afghanistan after millions of voters headed to the polls Saturday in the country's landmark presidential election. After decades of conflict and instability, many say that it's a success that the elections were even held. James Aiken reports.
In a country tormented by violence, poor security, and a battered economy, Afghans turned out by the millions across the country to make their voices heard. For the most part, the threat of attacks by the Taliban to disrupt the election never materialized, and the vote was largely peaceful. We are so happy that yesterday's election took place in a peaceful environment, says Kabul resident Abdul Latif. There was good security and everywhere was peaceful. More than half of the 12 million eligible voters went to the polls to pick a successor to President Hamid Karzai. The turnout was so high that some polling centers ran out of ballots and voting hours were extended by an hour. Afghanistan's election commission chairman said women accounted for 34% of the ballot in a country where progress on women's rights remains slow. The EU's foreign policy chief called the election a rare opportunity.
This will be a historic moment if we get this right, this democratic transition. We want to see everybody participating, including, I would say, all the women of Afghanistan, and we welcome what's been done to try and prepare for these elections.
With Karzai constitutionally barred from a third term, Afghans have been choosing a new leader from 8 presidential candidates. One of the front-runners is Ashraf Ghani Ahmadzai, an academic and former World Bank official who said the next leader faces daunting challenges.
We're going to give you our lives, but we want you to clean up. Are you capable of cleaning up the system, this corruption, this mismanagement, this bad governance?
When final results are announced in a few weeks, the country's new leader will also face a very different security landscape than his predecessor. Continued instability is all but certain as international combat forces prepare to withdraw by the end of this year. James Aiken, TVB News.
And still ahead in our newscast. Mainland scholar criticized over national security law proposal. A plan to relocate a Mongkok government facility to West Kowloon. And a survey finds many foreign domestic helpers overcharged by recruitment agencies.